Oops. All right, good evening, everybody. It's call to order this Wednesday, March 5th, Rockport School Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded audio and video for posterity. It will be on the web for anybody to view. For the record, let's go around and introduce ourselves, please.
June Sanfilippo, Business Manager.
Mark Lorenz, Committee Member.
Nicole Altieri, Vice Chair.
Kathy Riley, Chair.
Good evening, Mark Branco, Superintendent.
Amy Oakes, Committee Member.
Jessica DeLisi, Committee Member.
That's great. Thanks, everybody. The first item is the approval of the minutes from February 5th. Has everybody had a chance to read them in the drive? Yes, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the above minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Do we have any public comment this evening? See a couple of new faces. Just come on up, push the button, and
Never get a compliment, but the in the loop thing, that was great. I got mine yesterday. I'm actually going to forward it to my parents, even though I have to pay to do that because they're in Arizona. I thought it was really good. And the only other thing I wanted to say was the NHS is doing their blood drive on March 20th between 8:30 and 2:30 if anyone wants to sign up to donate blood.
where is the blood drive being held?
At the school in the blood mobile outside. Oh, sorry, yeah. Try it again. Amy Hooper, 1 Gaphead Road.
Do we have any correspondence at this time? Oops, we do. Okay.
So we had some late breaking correspondence that I didn't put in the drive because it's just sort of been coming in as part of what Amy was talking about with the in the loop. So I did want to just share a little bit of feedback. We have received some really positive feedback about the in the loop newsletter. And I just want to give you a little bit of a flavor from some of these emails that we're getting. This one says, a grateful Rockport grandmother thanks you all for the wonderful launching of Rockport Public Schools in the Loop. It provides valuable information for all, capital all, in Rockport. And another one says, I'm writing to thank you for your recent RPS Loop newsletter. I'm a community member, lived in Rockport 44 years, retired educator. Very appreciative to learn how things are going in the schools. In all my years living here, this might be the first time the communication was so comprehensive. Thank you. And then I believe we just got another one hot off the presses. We received the Rockport Public Schools in the Loop. It was extremely informative. We especially liked the student and teacher spotlight. Thank you for all the work that was done for the children and families in our community. And so, interestingly, there is a demographic breakdown of who's letting us know right out of the gate that they're really happy with this too. So I think we've talked about this publicly. We have an average age of 60, 61 years old in this community. We know that if you don't have children in the school district, you're not paying attention necessarily to digital newsletters from principals or even receiving them or coming to our websites. And so we really feel like this is our best way to get information out to the entire community. And so we'll talk more about this when the subcommittee does updates, but just a quick acknowledgement that we're getting really nice feedback, and we're looking forward to already thinking about the next one.
So excited that it's so well received. It is a piece of work. It's really nice. Do we have any donations?
We do. We have some nice thank yous tonight. Thank you to Barbara Sparks, who donated a Roland electric piano, digital piano to the music department. Thank you to Rockport Rotary, who sent in a check for $250 to support DECA. Thank you to Brackett's Restaurant for sending in $350 to support DECA. And we had an anonymous donor who offered to pay off all unpaid student lunch and breakfast bills. Awesome. And so we had $276 in outstanding lunch and breakfast bills, and we would like that anonymous donor to know that they are thanked, and I will make sure that gets passed along on behalf of the committee.
It doesn't look like we have any personnel tonight.
We do not.
Okay, and share the success.
I can do some quick commercials, and
Okay.
then if anybody on the committee has more to add, I think that would be a good opportunity to jump in. But I do want to acknowledge that we had a finalist in our recent DECA state competition, Rumi Koram, who's a 10th grader, so congratulations. Also, we have Juniper McCoy, am I saying that right? Juniper McCoy, our 8th grader, who won our school spelling bee and then went on to pass the regional test, and will then be going on to be in the regional spelling bee, and if she wins the regional spelling bee, she gets to go all the way to DC. So we're cheering for her. And our boys basketball team plays Saturday at 1 o'clock Westport, in Westport, and they are in the Elite Eight. And I believe this is the first time in forever. 1982? 1992. A long time since we've had a team get that far. So congratulations to the boys and to Coach Whitley, and we hope that we can get a whole bunch of Rockport people down there to support us.
Can I add real quick, if you haven't
Yep.
had a chance to get down to the Art Association, we have our art show going on right now. It's been going on, but the reception's tomorrow,
Yes, yeah,
right? Is tomorrow
Yes.
the reception?
correct. Tomorrow's
Yeah.
last night.
I mean, yeah, so every year my husband and I go down and we are just amazed at the art that's put out. I mean, obviously at the high school level, but even down to the younger grades, to see some of the budding artists we have in our community, it's really a moment of pride for us. So
I believe at 5 o'clock is the National Honor Society National Art Honor Society induction, and then at 5:30 is the celebration with recognition, and then one more night. So yeah, if you have the time tomorrow night from 5 o'clock on, it'll be a really fun event.
You guys did very well in place of the student advisory committee. Okay, so policy subcommittee update. Who's in charge of that?
Well, do you want me to go with it, or
Sure.
Amy? No? No? Okay. Chime in, though, if you need to, so we met today, first time in a little bit.
Yep.
We really were trying to organize everything that's been happening. We've been doing a lot. So tonight was really a lot about organization, kind of cleaning up a few things, doing little bits and pieces so that next time we meet as a subcommittee, we can really spend our time reviewing our final section. So do you want me to go through each one of these?
You want to just talk through them quick, and then we'll show
Yeah.
them next one. Yep.
So we did a review of the Parent Advisory Council policy, KBF. That's a new policy that we're like to add to the manual. It's being recommended from the school attorney, so we can talk more about that one. We talked about, which I believe is on the agenda to talk more about, IIB, class size, so we can get into more detail on that one. And then we voted to bring section I and G for first reads next full committee member meeting on the 19th, I believe it is. So those sections will be available for first reads. There's 4 sections in G that we've already previously approved, so those you can see listed, those 4 sections there. Next meeting, we have plans to do Title IX policy. So that'll be on the agenda for next time, along with that section J. So, and that's it. So we're really getting to our final stretch here. Our plan is to get everything done and brought to the full committee by the end of the year. So we're on track.
It minimally for a second read for the last meeting of the full committee before there's a rollover. So we sort of did a little backwards design today and put an extra meeting in just in case. So we think we'll get it all done. What we have for you tonight, so you have hard copies of the draft policy and the current policy. So we'd like to start with the first bullet and let Amy and Mark kind of lead the committee through a conversation about what we've talked about at the subcommittee level with a compare and contrast, why the draft looks like it looks, and then open it up for some comments and feedback so that your comments and feedback can then go back to the subcommittee on the 19th and make any adjustments necessary so that we can put it in your packet for a first read that night at the 19th. So I'll step out and let the two of you sort of facilitate this if you'd like.
I'm not sure where to start. So that section I, we've voted to bring it to the full committee, except for this IAB. Although after our discussions tonight, the plan would hopefully, if everybody's in agreement, to bring that forward as well into that section, so we have our full section I for the next read.
If you want me to give that history, Mark, I can give the quick history before you go, that I had read over 100 policies.
Yeah, I think,
Is
yeah,
that
why
right?
don't, I think that's very
okay.
relevant. I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea to
So
do
I
that.
read over 100 policies on the MASC website, all of their class size policies. The great majority of class size policies no longer have numbers in them. There's about a dozen related to students as far as class size numbers for recommendations. About a dozen still do, and if my memory serves me correctly, more than half of those 12 are because they haven't had a review process in some time. So as I've called around to my peers in districts who have already done the heavy lifting for new policy work, the rationale is with declining enrollment across the Commonwealth and with the funding structures so problematic coming out of the state for public schools, that the recommendation is to not put a school committee in a position to have a hard number that will then drive people to come to you and hold you accountable for a policy when the state funding mechanism is quite honestly broken and when we have declining enrollment in most of the communities across the Commonwealth. So that's really the driver behind this. Is I tried to kind of call the landscape for you and do a deep dive into over 100 policies. And if you look at your current policy, I believe what we discussed tonight was the majority of this is either process or philosophy.
So one thing that really helped me too is what's highlighted in yellow on the draft is what was existing in the current policy.
Right.
So what's highlighted in yellow isn't really changing. That's already there. Those specific numbers are being removed, along with some of that process stuff.
So in our subcommittee meeting, we talked about whether some of this language might exist in other places. For instance, there's a lot of language in the original policy about middle school philosophy. And so one of the things we talked about is it especially important that that language appears in this particular policy? And we think that there's a lot of language about middle school philosophy and about our middle school, high school in other places. And so we felt okay about that philosophical language going away. There's also language in the current policy about what a principal might do, and it's interesting, it's the elementary principal, what the elementary principal might do if there were a question about class size at the elementary level. And so we talked as a subcommittee about, does a process need to be in this policy? And as we have with really every other policy that we've reviewed, we've said, look, there are manuals and policies and procedures that our administrative team follows, and the procedure doesn't belong in the policy so much. So we felt comfortable removing a lot of the language, and we both felt comfortable removing the numbers. We also talked at length about the second paragraph, which you have that is highlighted in yellow. That comes directly from the old policy with the addition of the word teachers. And we talked about the words budgetary constraints at the end of that paragraph. And, you know, it's in the previous policy, and we thought, it's real. It needs to be in this policy as well. We understand there's a balance, right, between what you might wish for and what you can provide, and what research says is good for students, and you have to consider all of that. And so we really took, I think, this conversation to heart, and we wanted you all not to have to wordsmith this, but to be able to reflect on it. And if you have thoughts or suggestions and you want us to go back and wordsmith again, we certainly can. But I think the two of us, the school committee members, are comfortable bringing this to you, and obviously the superintendent is as well.
And I think it's the only policy out of hundreds of policies that we purposefully reviewed in 2 different meetings. Some policies we had to review in 2 different meetings, but in this one we elected to come back to it. And I just want to make sure when we look at this slide I included the current real numbers for enrollment purposefully so that we can have an authentic conversation about class size. And if you go left to right for the next 5 years, pick any of these numbers, 44 divided by 2, 40 divided by 2, 36 divided by 2. Class size is never going to be above 23 unless there's some massive birthing boom or housing market change in Rockport. So we feel confident that if there's a conversation tonight about numbers, we're in a much different place in the state than we were 10, 15 years ago when it comes to enrollment in general, with the birth rates declining and people having less kids in general. So I just want you to go back to this chart as we have a conversation.
I guess the last thing I would say when you think about this chart is that we're not in a situation where we take unlimited numbers of children from other school systems. So we don't accidentally bump up our class size beyond what makes sense and what is financially viable for us, right? It's the process you go through is very, very intentional and pretty tight. So if that's helpful.
Yeah, any questions about?
So we'd love questions or comments.
I have a comment and just kind of, I guess, a reminder is while we're looking at these class sizes, we're looking at the number of students per class. One thing we're not looking at is the staff to student ratio. And I just want to kind of remind everyone that we have a policy and Dr. Branco has, maybe not policy, might be the wrong word, but Dr. Branco has, said many times that if particular students in certain classes have certain needs, we're always going to make sure that there is staff in those classes for those needs. So while, our class size might not have a number of students, that doesn't mean that it's one staff to that number of students. I think that's important to remember.
Right. And I just want to clarify that that is specifically stated in that second paragraph there too, as well.
I also think it's important the line that says the superintendent will make the final decisions in collaboration with the school principals, because while we know Mark is super collaborative, Mark, 20 years from now, Mark might not always be the superintendent. So I think that it's important to call that out in the policy, that decision's made in collaboration with the building principals.
And there's two sort of public bites at the apple, right? I'll present, like I always do in October, when the DESE comes out with their October 1 enrollment. So you'll get that enrollment update. And then again, when we talk about class size and school choice and all that stuff together, you'll get that second, which we're doing some of that tonight. And then again, a committee can always ask the superintendent to come with an update, and a proactive superintendent will always come to you when there's a reason to talk about it.
Something I haven't always been clear on is middle and high school determining class size. How is that determined because of all the
So in middle school, it's clean divided by the amount of teachers per grade. In the core areas, it's when you get to middle and high school and you get into electives or specials or unified arts classes. And again, as a recovering band director, there are some classes that you don't mind having 25. Like I'd love to have a band of 100 kids or a chorus of 75. Gym teachers don't want 50 kids playing dodgeball or whatever we're allowed to play in there now. So some of it is contingent upon, and that's why that second paragraph talks about learning objectives, availability of class space, and instructional methods. That's all wrapped into the second paragraph. So, but for core classes, the 4 major subject areas, it's very cut and dry by the amount of teachers we have.
And to clarify, tonight you're explaining to us the procedure and everything. We take it, we digest it, and then we do the first read of this.
Yeah, so we were just looking for feedback on this draft. We will include it into the section I for the first read for next time. Yeah, so I think you have a slide that kind of outlines for the next steps.
Yep,
but
I do.
It'll be really the first reads on 3 sections, E, G, and I believe. Yeah. Sorry, Amy, you were gonna.
No. I'm just
Yeah,
looking at this.
I had to write it down or I wouldn't get it right. So it's there for you forever. So really the hope tonight is, do the 5 of you feel like this is ready to go for a first read, or is there somebody at the table who wants to have a deeper conversation around numbers? So if we're comfortable with it, that's what we need to hear. There's no vote really necessary. I think it's feedback tonight. And if we don't hear any contrary feedback, then we're going to run with it as a first read at the 19th meeting. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Looks like we're ready to run. Thank you.
So, by the 19th, this is a lot because we have 3 sections. We haven't had this much policy in a while because we haven't met during the budget season. So what's going to happen is you're going to be asked by that meeting to review the draft policy again that we talked about tonight. That will be in the folder, the Parent Advisory Council one, to review the subcommittee notes for E. And I gave you hard copies of those tonight, so you don't have to dive through the folders. I will show you in a minute where everything is in the folder, so if you're a tech person, you can go to the folder, but if you're hard copy, you have them. So we need you to go through the subcommittee notes. I told you which set of notes to look at for E, and then review the clean section of E. Then the same thing, review the subcommittee notes in G, because they kind of tell you why we made the decisions we made. And then look at the clean version, and then the same thing for I, if you can look at the subcommittee notes, and then review the clean version. I will show you where everything is digitally in a minute, but Amy has recommended that we make a copy of the clean one. So central office tomorrow will put together 5 versions of the clean version. So if you're a hard copy person, it'd be way easier for you to do that. We'll put those together. I'll send an email out to the committee whenever they're done by the end of the week to let you know they're ready for you. And then you can take your hard copy and review them all. But when you go into the folder, just so you see everything, when you go into the school committee folder for this year, at the bottom, you'll see the policy folder. So I'm going to do it right in front of you so you see it all. And then you'll see all the meeting folders. And then you'll see our policy review notes. These are our review summary from last year. You'll see our current review summary to tell you where we've been and how we've gotten there. And then if you like the digital, this is the table of contents with the links to every single policy. So if you get a hard copy of the clean version and then you open up the with changes, you'll be able to look on your screen and compare the with changes to the real one. I think that'll be super helpful. And we figure this time we just give you 2 whole weeks to take a look. It's a lot to look at. So any thoughts or questions? Does that make sense?
Very well organized.
And it's the last time I think that we'll see a paper version of a policy manual, because after this, remember, all of the policies reside on the internet, and as we shift them, MASC,
They will be housed on MASC's site, and then we will have a digital link off our website.
so that future school committee members don't have to do what we just did. It'll be smoother and faster, and it'll be available to people electronically.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's positive.
Huzzah. Yeah,
So all good there?
yes.
All right. So Communication and Advocacy Subcommittee did meet on February 11th. And the big celebration is the newsletter's out. It hit mailboxes. I'll let you go.
So think back to the summer when we had a retreat and we said, oh, wouldn't it be really great if we did a better job with communication and advocacy? And we formed a subcommittee and we talked about what we thought should happen. But the reality is that Jess and I did not do all this work, right? And so I think we would just say how much we really, really appreciate the work that's happened at the administrative level. This didn't exist, and so if you think about it, there's graphic design that went into this. The graphic design integrates the strategic plan into it, which is really lovely. You see right across the top, high expectations, wellness, integrity, sense of belonging, creativity, and innovation. You see articles that highlight the work of teachers, special programs, students. You see some QR codes for people who want more information. But what you may not realize is that people went out and beat the pavement to raise money to pay for this. We really appreciate our supporters. I noticed there's a really lovely full page on the back from the foundation. And so it wouldn't have happened without community support. We really appreciate that. And it just arrived. It's arriving today, and it arrived yesterday. And so that was really our first push, right? And so then I think the next question is, we will be ready for a second edition, I think, later this spring, and we'll think about what did we love and what should we tweak, and most importantly, what's the content that needs to go out.
And a big,
And I can't say enough about the hard work that
so it's not
happened at
me,
your
it's
level.
really, it's Lori, it's Jody, it's Amanda, it's Mike. Contributing staff, that's countless teachers and staff members who wrote articles, took pictures and shared them with us. We sent a couple email blasts out and staff members stepped up, and we actually had, I believe we had more articles than we put in. And we actually had to make editorial decisions, which was crazy. So it just speaks to the internal learning community's desire to share what we do, how we do it, why we do it with the community. So really a big thanks to them. And again, to the local advertisers, anything we can do to supplement and defray costs on an initiative like this is important. And I do anticipate more advertisers coming in. And I really hope it's well received, and I hope it sits on people's coffee tables for a while and it gets reread. And then we'd like to leverage the postcards in the future too. Maybe, a save the date postcard goes out in August with all our concert dates and all of our art shows and musicals and plays that can be hung on a fridge and that kind of thing. So if we can get some steam off of this, we think it'll really help build some community relations and really bring the community members who aren't part of the learning community in totality back into the fold a little bit. And just some other screenshots. We've gotten a lot of press recently. Some of it is articles written by our staff members. Others are staff members calling the paper saying, hey, please cover this. And in some cases, we're just, we made enough news that the paper decided to cover it. So I just wanted to recognize that there's a lot of good effort going out to help meet this communication and advocacy goal. And I think the timing is right, and it's important that we let people know how hard we're working, how great the school district is for our kids, and the value added of having your own school district.
Jess, do you want to add anything?
I mean, you guys hit pretty much everything. I think for me, the big thing overlooking all of it is just the collaboration from top down, bottom up, however you want to call it. But from the students right up to the top of administration, from the administration right down to the students, is the collaboration in our schools is amazing, and how we see what you guys are doing, and we appreciate the work you guys are doing, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is the students.
Well, now everybody else sees the work that you're doing and the students are doing. I mean, this is amazing. I can't believe the positive feedback. Thank you. Thank everybody for doing this. This is amazing. This was something that was said, oh, we can't do that. Oh, we just can't do that. It's too much work. It's too much money. We can't. Yeah, we can, with a lot of work,
So
a
it's
little
good.
bit of money. Thank you very much.
So we're going to shift gears. We're going to bring Ms. Goodhue up for a conversation that we've been waiting to have. As we know that the votes are in, and MCAS is now not a graduation requirement. However, there was a lot of language and substance to the ballot and to the bill that I think might not have been disseminated by everybody clearly, and so now we're sifting through that at the state level and at the local level to find out what that vote really means. And one of them is that we have to have a sub-separate competency determination for students. And so Jody's done a ton of work around this and has reached out to other school districts and other people at the state level. I know that Principal Rose has also been in communication with principals regionally around this. I've been in superintendent roundtables talking about this. And everything that you see tonight, we will need a vote of approval. That's the expectation from the state. And then the reality is the state's already sent out an invite to all of us to join a think tank through DESE to see if the state can then take some control back again and have some competency determination expectations. So what we're voting on tonight will at least be for this year. But dare I say that there could be something else coming out within a year or two after that. So you just tell me to switch slides and I'll go.
You can go. I'm going to ask Mrs. Rose to come up too, since it's her building, and she'll be able to answer questions that I can't in regard to this level.
I trusted you.
I know you trust me. But you know that it passed on the ballot back in November. The law went into effect in December. So we're a tiny bit behind the 8 ball in getting this rolling based on the budget. So we kind of pushed this off to after the fact. So now we're at the point where we've analyzed the law, we've looked at what works for us, and we put together some language proposals later in the slide deck. But this one, I'm not going to read because I know you've had it, but it just shows you exactly the change from the old language and what it's being replaced with. So it's taken from the MCAS to the skills that are covered in the MCAS that were in that particular year of the 2023 year.
I don't mind pausing on each
Yeah,
one of
and
these.
you
I think
ask,
that's
you
the
can ask
smart way to
questions
go.
as we go,
So
but
for example, you sure? So for example, there's an expectation that even though we're not giving the MCAS test, the kids show competency in everything that the test would have tested because they're connected to the state frameworks.
and those tests are listed,
Yep.
so you know which ones we're talking about.
Okay.
And this is the full language of the law. It's a lot, and some of it is really confusing. Mark and I even went back over a few words saying that can't be right. But it's about the 10th graders. It's about math, science, history, social studies, foreign language, and English, although those were not all tested in MCAS, so we don't have to include all of those in our CD requirement. And they need to demonstrate mastery by satisfactorily completing the coursework in those courses to be able to get the CD or competency determination to graduate.
I have a quick question. Since I'm not a person that uses this language all the time, so when you're talking about competency determination and satisfactorily completing, is there like grades associated with that? Is that like, how is that determined?
That's actually one of the things that the state is looking at defining both mastery and satisfactorily. So that's just the beginnings of discussion. For us, it's passing.
Okay.
You're going to see that on whatever that last slide is where we're giving you a recommended language to vote on. I think we've selected passing for now.
So, what are the impacts of the changes? So they did offer the science retakes in February. Here on out, we're not sure if they're going to offer retests or not. They're still making that determination. Since it doesn't count as a requirement anymore, they might not even offer the retests. But class of 2025, if they've already earned the CD by passing the MCAS test that they needed to, by the dates they needed to, then there's no impact on them. Those who have not, even if they're on the EPP, which we've discussed before, if you're in a certain range of passing but not quite there, you're an educational proficiency plan, which basically is we track those courses we're talking about and make sure they satisfactorily complete them. Then they must meet the CD through this new law, which is why we need the language, the policy, and the program of studies updated with the new law language. And of course, MCAS is still required by federal and state law. It's still connected to accountability, and you still need the CD in order to graduate. So participation in MCAS is something it's big. There is no opt-out option from the state. So we are hoping that through our education and our staff encouraging the students to do their best on these tests, that we'll still have what we need from them. But the law just changed that piece of it. And all of the good stuff about MCAS is not impacted at all. So the scholarship programs and the mastery awards are still there.
Can a student still earn their CD through the MCAS testing?
No,
Okay, not at all.
that's what the law took away.
And sorry. I have a lot of questions because I feel this feels like, all the language kind of. So like with MCAS, if they took it in 10th grade, they didn't pass it, they could retake. So they had basically up until senior year
They did.
pass. So let's say someone isn't past getting their CD in grade 9 or 10, English, Algebra 1, all of those, they have until when to complete that? The same time frame, or how does that work?
Yes, basically, as long as it takes them to get where they need to get, but it's the 10th grade requirements. So we're hoping that those students meet those requirements in 10th grade, but if not, there are opportunities to recover credits and or retake courses in the next couple of years.
Which, just to clarify, those are graduation required courses anyway, so you wouldn't be able to graduate without those classes. Before you needed those classes and MCAS, and now you essentially need those classes. I mean, they still need to take the MCAS, we'll use that data, but the classes for graduation have not changed, so they've always needed to pass those classes. Some students may have passed the MCAS without passing the classes. They would have still had to repeat the class or take a credit recovery class. Now it's really mostly all based on coursework, and the MCAS is used for data purposes.
I think what's most misunderstood is that all the law changed is that MCAS can't be used for graduation requirements. It's still required by federal and state law, and it's tied directly to federal funding for accountability, as of right now at least. And so that's important to understand. And we have a really strong culture of progress monitoring in this district. And so my philosophy, and I believe our district philosophy, is that we believe in local, state, and nationally normed data, and that helps us build a profile of a child. So that MCAS data that we get on a third grader or a fourth grader or a fifth grader is integral when we start to develop a learning profile of a student, to say, oh, you know, when we look at our local assessments, our MCAS data, and whatever nationally normed data we use for progress monitoring, that builds a complete educational profile of the child, and we're going to get better and better every year in the classroom and in the data meetings at using that data. So it is an important piece of information. The law changed. The reality of it doesn't have to be passed for graduation. Does not minimize the importance of that data.
So they still have to take the MCAS, right? You know, periodically. 10th grade MCAS is still there, correct?
Yep.
There's no
All
pass,
of the MCAS are still there.
They're all
Right.
the same. Yeah.
no pass, no fail per se.
There's
State
still
still-
exceeding expectations, meeting expectations. Those are still there. The scores are still there. The growth is still there. It
So-
just doesn't count for your CD requirement anymore.
It's just not a requirement for graduation.
Yep.
So we could still look at the scores the exact same way. The only difference is we're not gonna look at like the, 3 or 4 or 1 or 2 or whoever didn't pass and be doing retakes as many times as they need to track for graduation.
Let you move on with the rest of it before, because I'm sure the rest of it, because I think there were other things of how
Okay.
Rockport's going to handle that.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask one more question. So it's still required for the district to administer the test. Is it still required for every single student to take the test? And if
Yes.
so, how do we do that without retakes? If they're not having,
They don't have to pass the test. They have to take the test.
there will still be retakes for kids that haven't taken it?
Oh, if they're absent, they'll come back and take it when they come in. But if they do not pass it, we do not need to make them take a retest.
So the retests were only for kids that didn't pass?
Yes.
Gotcha. Interesting. Thank you.
Yes.
There were there was a difference between retakes and makeups. So there's a period of time, like if you're out because you're, medical absence, there's makeups associated. So we have a window of time, for middle school, quite a long window where if, you come in a week later because you were sick, you can still take it. That's a makeup. But the retests that were in November and February were for high school only because that was a required graduation requirement. So they tried to give 3 opportunities for students to be able to pass. So those we don't think any longer exist, although they may. We're not sure.
They may, but just like anybody from 3rd grade to 9th grade now, if they didn't pass, they just move on. So these are the DESI recommendations for the district to align with the new language of the statute, to have you approve our new language, to share this language with the whole community, all the stakeholders, and then to publicly make that available in all languages. So the one thing that, in addition to approving new language for the competency determination tonight, you will have to update your policy in this area about graduation requirements. I'm not even sure if they were completely accurate as written because they were older than what the new requirements are. And this is straight from MassCore. These are the graduation requirements based on units of study in each area that students need to take and pass.
And most of you, Jess, this might be new to you, but most of us have seen this before. This is the framework that they put out to kind of hold a benchmark for all high schools in the Commonwealth to meet.
I would just say this is a minimum standard, like ours are actually more than that, but that's minimally what we have to follow.
Thank you.
and these are ours. So this is our language, so I will try to read this one. So by satisfactorily completing the coursework that demonstrates the mastery of the skills, competencies, and knowledge covered by the standards and curriculum frameworks for grade 9 and grade 10 English, Algebra 1 and Geometry, or Geometry and Algebra 2, Introductory Physics, and one additional lab-based science course such as chemistry, biology, or any other approved course approved by the administration, students will have met the competency determination required as set forth by Rockport Public Schools and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the grade 9 and the 10 English, that makes sense. For the Algebra 1 Geometry or Geometry Algebra 2, that just depends on what courses the students take in grade 9 and 10. Some take algebra, then geometry. Some start with geometry and then go on to algebra 2. And then the introductory physics is what every 9th grader takes now. And then we need the additional lab-based course to meet the second one. And like Amy said, our requirements are higher than that by core requirements and by the school.
So this is the language after we've had committee conversation. This is the language that we'll need the motion for to approve.
So nothing's actually changed for our graduation standards. We just have to call out this competency determination. But in reality, you need to do this, and you still need to meet all the graduation requirements for Rockport High School.
Yeah, so every year, as most of you know, but just, guidance counselors track graduation, courses for graduation. High school students have a transcript, everything's on the transcript. So all of this is everything that anybody has ever needed to graduate from Rockport High School and more. The only difference is that previously, in addition to the courses the students had to take, there's been community service that we track in terms of hours, and then there's MCAS tests that we have also tracked. So there's been sort of those 3 columns to make sure students have met all the criteria, so that we would no longer necessarily need to consider MCAS scores to determine if a student can graduate or not. We can use them for data purposes, but they would no longer be part of the graduation requirement.
And this, I know, is pretty wordy, but all of the links are live links to all of the different language and advisories and things that have been put out by the governor. So it does, we think, cover exactly what it needs to say for us to meet that CD requirement.
Just so that you don't think we're making this a heavier lift than it's supposed to be, the biggest frustration we've had going out to our own roundtables is that many of us advocated to just say, why do we have to have a sub-separate competency determination? Or why can't we just say, you've passed your local's expectations at this point? And the state was very clear when it didn't pass that that's not the way the law was written. There has to be a sub-separate something, and it's now called this. It has to be a sub-separate competency determination.
I have a couple of questions. The science distribution requirement ensures that students will have 2 years of science. Do we have any concerns about whether the MCAS was a general integrated science test, but in fact what we're doing is physics and one other class? Are we okay? I mean, we must be.
Yeah, the MCAS wasn't a general science. There was an introductory physics and or a biology, and there used to be more, but those were taken away anyway because more students took the physics and the bio.
Physics is what we did.
Yeah, we did the physics. We used to,
I see.
but those were the 2 that were
They're
offered. so
content
schools
specific.
Yeah, they were content specific.
Thank you. And then the other thing I would say is more of a comment, and it's a placeholder for somewhere down the line when we begin to look at accountability data for our school system, when we've removed the high stakes nature of this test, and yet we are still held accountable for the results. And I think this is probably a different bird walk, but if NAEP goes away, then we've lost the National Association of Educational Progress test, and we've changed the degree to which MCAS is a high stakes test. And so I'm just thinking about what really robust measures we will have for reading and math as children age up. And I'm not thinking so much about the little ones who I'm thinking a little bit about older students, because we all know that we get tired of taking tests as we age, and the data is important, yes, but also when it gives us a rating on a state accountability report that goes up on a state website. That really matters. And I suppose the same thing will happen all around the state. It's not just Rockport that probably needs to remember, but I guess I'm just sort of saying when it comes time to talk about our accountability reports and ratings, I hope we'll come back and think a little bit about whether this will have any impact on those results. Thank you.
Amy, I just want to add to that that has been the topic of, I go to high school, the Cape Ann League high school principals meetings once a month, and all the high school principals are nervous, I think, about that. Not because they know that we can't take them, but just because typically it does up the ante, for some students at that age to take the test seriously. So, but I think it's not just us. We'll see how that plays out across the state. But
Yeah, and so I guess my short reaction to that, yeah, it is a placeholder. I think it's a long conversation about accountability and what that means and doesn't mean for every state, and the importance that Massachusetts has placed on it, so to speak, when we say that we are the top state in the nation when it comes to education, and what are those metrics going to look like or not look like down the road, and then how do we know our kids are comparatively successful from town to town, city to city. So it does have ramifications that we are just going to sort of watch at this point. And I'm sure we'll find ourselves in another meeting next year at some point around accountability, I would suspect. So if there's no other question or comment, then we would need a motion to accept the CD requirement as presented.
Will this go into the policy then? Because we're doing a first read of I next week.
Right, we're gonna do graduation policy at the subcommittee level on the 19th, and then you'll see a new version of that one, so that might be held out for the 19th.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Okay.
yet, depends how quickly we go. But yes, there'll be competency determination language, and the updated graduation requirements that we did last year will be put into the new one as well.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, to have a motion to accept the CD requirement as presented this evening.
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
I think you have one more slide.
I'm sorry, it's not my slide deck, sorry.
That's okay. Just, Mark already referenced this in terms of the governor has issued new executive orders and pulled together a statewide graduation council. So I don't think that this is the last we've heard of this. We'll probably be back again next year. Like I said, they're trying to define terms. They're trying to decide whether to add in social sciences and or world languages, which would be tricky given special education requirements. But they are all talking about this a lot, and there will be more information coming. And so I think we'll be back.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Okay. Next up.
So related to the earlier discussion of class size, in your drive and on the screen, we have leadership team and I, or the principals and I, and Jody and Anne-Marie have gone through a proposal for you for school choice recommendations. Same format that we had used. Let's see if I can make it a little, let's just make it a little bigger for the audience if I can do it. Maybe I can't. So same format we used in the past couple of years, so you can see this year's enrollment with superimposed with the other one under it. And so you can see that we're proposing no seats in 1 and 2, 10 in K based on past enrollments. And remember that we have 3 teachers in kindergarten, and then we go to 2 teachers starting in first grade. So opening up 4 seats in third grade, which puts us 36 plus 4, gives us the 40 students divided by 2, gives us a little wiggle room for some move-ins right there. Capping 4th grade because they're already at 40, capping 5th grade because they're already at 46, opening 7 spots in 6th grade, which is a big win for us. As we've tracked this data over the past, 5-6 years at least, we see kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade as the 3 points where students and families most want to make a move to Rockport Public Schools. So the hope really is to be able to leverage school choice appropriately without impacting class size negatively, and to really get a good mix of student body in our community. So that's really a positive win. I think we were unable to do that last year based on some other driving factors. So I'm happy that we can do that. 2 seats in 6th grade, none in 8th grade because of the size of our current 7th grade, 10 in the freshman class, and then traditionally we do not open up any beyond 10th grade for a lot of reasons. When students come from other high schools, they come with different course sequences, with different graduation expectations, and it's often difficult for the student and the school to integrate 10th and 11th grade from an academic standpoint, and how are we getting credits made up or not made up. So many high schools are opening more seats in 9th grade and then closing them off. So this is our proposal tonight for a total of 33 seats. And in all cases, with the exception of 8th grade, even if you had kept, because we're currently working under your current policy, so under your current policy, we're within the school committee recommended class size. And you can see that bubble class that we were worried about last year, where we talked about having an extra para, is at 46. And so really they're at 23. And so this is one of those conversations we talked about where there's an ebb and flow all the time. And so that actually, all of those conversations we had last year in that class wound up actually at or below the number that you recommended anyway. So we're confident that this is a good number. We welcome any comments, questions, and then hopefully a vote to approve.
I have a question. I'm kind of new to this, so are these numbers concrete, or is there any wiggle room to them? Like, say a family came in and they were trying to, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals, maybe they had a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, and a 4th grader. There's room for kindergarten, 3rd grade, but not 4th grade. Would we make an exception in those circumstances? No.
No, you have to apply for each kid individually.
Right, but I just didn't know if
No,
there
these,
were circumstances where there
no,
were exceptions
no,
made.
once you approve these seats, these are the seats that are
Cool.
open. Yep.
Thank you.
Are you, I just wanted to clarify, are you asking if someone moved into town or applied for choice?
Yep.
Okay,
I got it.
okay,
Yeah, I got it.
all right. That, then yes.
Then do I have a motion to accept the school choice program numbers for the following school year? As,
So moved.
okay, so, all in favor? Aye, thank you.
So, right, not a light topic. A serious conversation about supporting and protecting all students. And I just felt like now that the dust is starting to settle, we have to make sure we have a public-facing conversation and around what's happening at the federal level and how it's going to impact families in Rockport and students in the Rockport Public Schools. So Governor Healy and Attorney General Campbell recently issued an updated joint statement, and DESE did as well, to really talk about equal access and representation in education. You have both documents in your drive, so I put them in there. I wanted you to have both memos so you could see the substance of the memos. And for the public tonight, I just wanted them to see some of the snippets that I pulled. So I won't read off the screen, but I just, some of these highlights around, the DESE's vision and our vision remains unchanged. We are going to create a public education system where every student is seen and heard and valued. That's not going to change. When we talk about equity in the schools and in the classrooms, that's not going to change. When we talk about meeting the needs of all students and sense of belonging, that's not going to change. The work is grounded in Mass General Law, and we will continue to not discriminate in public schools based on race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, or sexual orientation. And that all students, all meaning all, are entitled to equal access in free and public education. So a lot of what I shared with you was related to criminalization, and it was related to immigration status in the deeper documents. And so what's really important to know is that our kids are protected, our kids are here, nobody can access our children other than their parents without parental permission, and that if we're ever in a situation where something changes, we have a chief of police that is very strong on this particular topic, and he and I will be working hand in hand to make sure that families and kids are kept safe. And so the short version of this is it's business as usual in Rockport Public Schools, and we're putting kids and families first, and I think that's an important statement for me to make tonight. So I value comments or thoughts on it, but just wanted to make sure we put it out tonight.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I thank Mark for bringing this for a public conversation, because I think in Massachusetts, these are sort of core values, and throughout the state, this is what we're doing. But I think it's important for us to have a public conversation about this in Rockport, and to make sure that students and families and the entire community know that every student will be supported in the Rockport schools.
I agree. I think it's important for our community to see this, and I think it's really important for students to see it. And I appreciate that you bring it to the public meeting and that you reiterate it. So thank you very much. It's very timely.
You know, and I just think, I talked about students and families, but I would be remiss if I didn't just talk about all members of the learning community. Right? We have adults that need to be taken care of in today's climate as well, and so that we're going to take all of that very seriously. All right, you're up.
Thank you.
I'll pull it out of the drive while you're starting.
Oh, okay. This is through December 31st, which is quarter 2 of our fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. As you can see, our reserve and number has dropped just a little bit. I would say this is due to 2 major factors. This would be the elementary staffing based on our current students' needs, that we've adjusted our staffing based on who we have and the needs of those students. I want to assure you that that was included in the fiscal '26 budget build, so this isn't something that will come up as a additional issue right off the bat on day 1 of fiscal '26. The other one would be our unanticipated capital expenses, and those are things that come up that you basically need or we have no control over, that happened over the summer and into the fall. And instead of going to the town for emergency money, we've absorbed it ourselves. And some of them is just enhancements that we feel are worth it. For example, part of that $84,000 that we've spent so far this year is there's additional flooring issues in certain classrooms that weren't part of the capital package. We absorbed that and took care of it immediately instead of making another ask for capital for next year. We added the high top tables to the senior area and outside the caf when we originally, the capital outlay was just for the tables that are in the cafeteria itself. We've now completed the whole project, so we absorbed that. Our original playground, our gorgeous playground, has had its original equipment. So some things have broken, worn out, etc. Those, and it becomes, some can become a safety issue. So those have been addressed, replaced, fixed, done. The other one is there was a fire alarm issue in the gym that had to be immediately, obviously, for safety. That was absorbed by us. The irrigation system, there was a problem in the well with the pump, and that needed to be addressed. And we took care of that before winterizing. And then we had our roof leaks and in the music, especially in the music room area. So that area has been addressed, and we did the study. We absorbed the cost of the study. The town has graciously offered to cover the cost of the roof. We can't absorb that ourselves in our own budget, but we did pay for the study and the leaks in the music room area.
So I think what's important to point out on these unanticipated capital expenses are that we have a really good partnership with the town. We work with CIPC to get what we can get, but that's one piece of pie out of a whole pie, and it's shared and distributed accordingly. Unfortunately, with public buildings, you can't just not address some of the issues as they come up. So I think it's important publicly for us to have the conversation that while they are town buildings, and while CIPC should be able to theoretically manage as much as they can, that's not the reality in any community. And so the reality is that our budget, which might not have been set up to deal with those unanticipated expenses, has always absorbed some of that. And this just happens to be a year where it's over $80,000.
Right. And even though we've done that, we are still doing very well for the school year and are comfortable with the way we're going.
For the benefit of folks watching at home or who might not understand, $84,000 seems like a lot of money. Where did it come from?
Well, when we budget, we're anticipating, like when we did our budget, we're anticipating our needs. Our needs have come and not been as much as been required in certain categories. It may be over. And right now, we're just still taking it out of our general budget line. If it continues, or if something happened in another area of need, whether it be student-related or building or staff, then eventually you would dip into your reserves. But right now, we're still on track.
And right now, again, for the public, because we have line item autonomy within there, we are fortunate that there are places where we haven't spent to the budgetary number yet. So we've been able to make some good decisions around that. But again, it's the number is very healthy for this time of year. Actually, that's still sitting here. But the hope is that we've sort of settled in on unanticipated needs.
Right. To be honest, even mid-year, to see your gross operating budget still in the black and not dipping fully into your reserves is unusual. So
Yeah, we haven't.
I think we did a really good job collectively, staff, school committee, everyone, in building this budget this year, that when these little things happen, you can adjust and absorb. And it's really quite impressive.
And in my past lives, I've been part of districts that freeze by November, freeze in January, and say to everybody, hey, you can't spend anything. Don't buy pencils, don't buy paper, don't buy toner. And we haven't frozen at all in the 3 years that we've been doing this together. So I think that's a pretty solid win too right now.
Yes, I agree.
So, any questions, thoughts, comments on this?
Question about what happens if you don't spend all the operating expenses that were budgeted at the end of the year? Can you use that to do more capital expense stuff at the end of the year if you have money left over, or does that go?
You would want your
Somewhere?
reserve to stay
Stay.
healthy because your bottom line number is going to drop every extra
Right.
amount. Right now, we're at 1.9 million estimated in our reserves with what we anticipate to still show up for the rest of the year because we still have $88,000. So if you chose to spend that on a capital project, that 1.9 million would drop $88,000. So it's a choice. It's a balancing of what you need, what you should hang on to for next year's needs.
And we've been super conservative, right, for 3 years now, for 3 budget bills to make sure
Yeah,
that remains healthy.
Overall, in Rockport,
Right.
we've always been conservative.
Yeah.
People look at this number and go, wow, you have this money. It's needed because as enrollment shrinks, which we've already had this discussion in the budget build, that amount's gonna be needed. We're not gonna be bringing in the amount of revenue that is needed to make our budgets work.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, do we have any other school committee discussion, anyone else would like to bring up? Okay. I did not think we'd be done this early. No executive session?
We do not have.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, thank you.